Okay, kiddos, now we're working on our last section of Unit 4. We're going to talk about areas of composite figures. Okay, so composite, that may be a new word that you may not have fully used, but what that just means is for composing things. So composition is our items put together. Okay, so that's how we can think of items put together. So that's how we can think of finding the area of any figure. Okay, so this one right here is a different type of figure. We've worked with those before. We're talking about polygons, and those are trapezoids. But we can figure, if we don't know the formula for the area of this shape, we know we can break it up into smaller shapes, right? We can think of it as a rectangle, right, like this, and a triangle. Okay, so if we know that, then we can use the area of a triangle formula for this, right? And then use the area of a rectangular formula for this, and then we will find the area of that whole trapezoid. Okay, so that's how we can use it for anything. Okay, so let's do that. All right, so see first if you know what the formulas are for area of a triangle and rectangle. Pause the video, see if you can write those down. All right, so the area of a triangle is area, we can put a triangle right there, is going to be equal to 1/2 of the base times the height. Okay, then the area of a rectangle, anything that has, of course, four right angles, right? We're going to say the area, we can say area of a rectangle is equal to base times height, right? Okay, so using that, let's see if you can do these calculations first on your own. See if you can pause the video and find that out. All right, so hopefully you try to pause it, but we can do this. All right, so let's look over here. So on the triangle first, right, we need the base and the height. Well, this actually is the base, right? Well, how much is that? Well, let's look over here. We know the whole thing is 11.6, and we know this part is 6.7, right? Okay, so what we remember is part plus part equals whole, right, from the beginning. So if this is a whole piece, then we can say that 11.6 minus 6.7 gives us this part right over here, right? So that's going to give us a length of 4.9. And so we can say this right over here is 4.9. Okay, so if that's our base, right, so we can say the area of this triangle is going to be 1/2 of the base of 4.9 times the height. Now, what do you think the height is? Well, if this is a rectangle, if that's 5, that means this is also 5, right? So if we put that into our calculator, that gives us, all we have to do is just now type that in, 1/2 times 4.9 times 5, and that gives us 12.25, right? 12.25. And we're going to say inches and squared. Okay, so we're going to square it because it's area, right? And we're using our units, which is inches. All right, now thinking about that, see if you can find the area of the rectangle. Okay, so the area of the rectangle is equal to our base times our height, right? So on this one, the base is 6.7, the height is 5, right, for that one. So 6.7 times 5. So hopefully you push yourself to get that one on your own, but otherwise, at least we got it now, right? So that's going to be, of that one is going to be 33.5, and we said that's inches squared, right? So if we want to find the area of the whole thing, we're just going to add this and this, right? We're going to say that's going to be equal to, we can do the math on this, right? The 5 plus the, we know that that's a 0 at the end, right? Because we're going to see that these are, that's just decimal here and decimal places over there, right? So we're going to say that this 5 in the hundredths plus the 0 gives us a 5, right? Then we have the 2 plus the 5 gives us a 7, right? Then we have the 2 plus the 3 gives us a 5, right? And then we bring down the 4. So that's what our total area is, right? It's going to be 45.75. Okay, now that we know that, we can, that's what we do is just to experiment to break this down into two separate parts, right? We know that we have a rectangle right over there, right? And then we have a triangle right over there. So if we do that, then we can find the area of the whole thing. Now, on the area of a trapezoid, I don't know. We don't have a symbol for a trapezoid, but we can do that. So what that is that's going to be the base 1 plus the base 2 divided by 2, right? So what I could have done is I could have said 11.6 plus 6.7 divided by 2, right? Because, oh, I'm sorry, times the height. And this is times height, right? Because we're doing area, right? So if I did that times 5, that would equal the same thing. Okay, and of course we would expect it to equal the same thing, right? Because that's what we love about math. All right, so either way, all right, but that's how we can break down any shape. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's practice some other areas that we may not have practiced in this way before, right? So this says the area of this triangle below is 3/4 square centimeters. So on this one, they're starting with giving us the area, okay, and they want us to now find the length of the base. Okay, so now that's a little bit different calculations, but we're going to still just use our same formula. So let's just do the algebra on it, right? We're getting much better on our algebra. So we said the area of a triangle is going to be 1/2 times the base times the height, right? So let's fill in what we know. Now, first off, when I see these fractions right over here, let's convert actually all these fractions into decimals, right? And we'll make that easier. So 1/2, that's the same thing as 0.5, right? We can put that into our calculator. Right, now let's put 3/40 into our calculator. If we put 3/40 into our calculator, that's going to give us 0.075. Okay, that's a different calculation. And now let's do that one, 1/4. You already may know what that is, but 1/4 is equal to 0.25, right? So now let's keep those three fractions in mind, because I think that's going to make it a lot easier for us to do our math. All right, so now let's just fill in what we know. All right, so pause the video for a moment, see if you can enter in the information that we know into this formula right over here. All right, so hopefully you tried. So the area, it says the area is 3/4 square centimeters. So that's what they give us. So we said, not 3/4, 3/40. We said 3/40 is 0.075. So let's put that over here, 0.075, right? Equals 1/2. So instead of that, we said 1/2 is 0.5. Okay, and then the base, okay, the base is x, right? That's what we're trying to find. All right, let's just put an x there. Okay, so we're going to say base times x and then times our height. All right, what's our height? Our height is 0.25. Okay, so now that we filled it in, that's the hardest part. Once again, now let's just do the math. All right, so let's go from left to right. Okay, so over here, we just have that 0.075. I know this may look weird, but that's okay. Let's just follow the math. Now we have 0.5, and we can put that in parentheses if it helps us, right? 0.5 times x times 0.25. Well, here's what we know. All these are multiplying, right? But we can only do the numbers times the numbers. So 0.5 times 0.25 gives us 0.125, right? So if we put both of those into our calculator, right, 0.5 times 0.25, or half of 0.25 is 0.125, right? And then that's still now multiplied times the x, so that's why we're going to bring down the x right over here. Okay, so now that may look a little bit easier to you. See if you know what to do for the last step. Okay, hopefully you recognize it's still the same thing, just they look a little different, right? We always know our last step is just to divide by the coefficient, right? The number that's in front of the x. So if we divide this side by 0.125 to get that gone, we just do this side by 0.125, right? So if we do that, that's going to give us our answer is x is going to be equal to 0.6. Now, on this one, though, they want it to give us as a fraction, so we're just going to use that button on our calculator to convert from a fraction into 3/5. All right, and we know that is centimeters squared. Centimeters, right? Because they're asking for just the length of the base, right? So just centimeters. All right, so that's what we do. All we're going to do is we're just going to think about what we need to do to fill in our formula. First, convert it into decimals. I think that's going to make it easier, and then we just do our algebra. All right, keeping that in mind, let's keep it moving. All right, so let's look at this one right over here. So this one says, let's move this guy out of the way. Okay, so the triangle below is, sorry, let me move this guy. Triangle below is 14.25, all right, square feet. What's the length of the base? All right, so pause the video, see if you can find this one on your own, or at least try to set it up. All right, so what do we know? It says the area of the triangle is 14.25. They want us to find the length of the base. So let's see. We said the area of that triangle, right, is going to be equal to 1/2, right, times the base times the height. So the area is going to go over here, right? So it's going to be 14.25 is equal to 0.5, right? We know that, and we're trying to find the base of the whole thing, right? We're trying to find the base of this. So we can kind of just put it like this, right? X is the whole thing. Okay, so that's going to be X, and now our height is 5, right? So now let's just do the math, right? So we know that we're just going to bring down that left side, 14.25 equals, right? And then 0.5 times 5. You can also think about putting your calculator, before you put in your calculator, half, right, of 5 is 2.5, right? 2.5x. Right, then we just divide both sides by 2.5, right? So that gives us x is going to be equal to, what is that? 20. I forgot to type that into my own calculator. Right, of course, that's going to give you 5.7. And what is that going to be? Is it going to be square feet or just feet? That's going to be just feet because we're talking about length. Okay, so that's all we know. I have to know. Just keep that in mind. All right, so you can do that practice now. Let's move on to the back side, and then you can do the practice after this. Okay, so now let's just look at things in a different perspective over here on the back side. All right, so what if we had where we really couldn't kind of see what the height or the base was as well, so as easy as we maybe want to. All right, so let's take a look at this one right over here. So imagine that we had this problem, okay? And it's asking us to find the height. Now, if we said the height was this, that's actually not the height. We need to measure it like this for the height. Okay, so that's what we need to keep in mind is whenever we're trying to find the height, especially in geometry, we can think of it moving a different way, right? So even if we flip this over right here, this could be the height as long as it's perpendicular, right? As long as it makes a 90-degree angle with the base, right? 90-degree angle with the base. Even if we flipped it over here, right, the height would still be that much in the base, right? And the same thing applies to parallelograms, right? If that's the base, that would be the height, because we're talking about from the bottom to the top, right? From the bottom to the top is the height. It doesn't necessarily have to be measured inside. You can measure it on the outside. It's still going to be the height, right? And then if you say that this is the base, that means the height could go from here to here, but it has to be perpendicular, right? That's why it slants down, because that's slanted, right? So if this is the base, then we know that's the height because it's perpendicular. Okay, so that's the whole thing, is that you have to make sure that it is perpendicular. Okay, once it's perpendicular, then you know that it is the height. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's go ahead and get it right into some practice. Okay, so what I would like you to do on this, though, is I want you to go ahead and pull up your Delta Math as well, so you can do this with us, with me at the same time. So let's go ahead and pull up this Delta Math, and let's go ahead and look at our practice for today. And all right, so for today's practice, we have this one right over here, so let's go ahead and click on that one. Okay, so it says drag the yellow point until an accurate height of the triangle is drawn. Okay, so if this yellow point's right over here, it says drag that until a height, right? As you see, the height is changing. So what is the right height? We said when it makes a 90-degree angle, right? So I'm going to wait to see until it makes a 90-degree angle, and it's right there. Okay, so now that I have a 90-degree angle, I know that my height is that 2.77. Okay, so now that I know that my height is 2.77, and I know that my base, right, the whole base is 7.7, now I can use that to write in my formula. Okay, so that's all we need to know on that, is using that to find our height. Okay, so let's type in our information over here. Okay, so we said the length of the base is 7.7, right? The height is 2.77. So the area of the triangle is going to be 1/2 times 7.7 times 2.77. So that's going to be equal to 10.6645. Okay, so that's what we need to do, is that we just need to make sure that we find that height of 2.77, because we find out that it is a right triangle, right? So that's what we need to make sure, is that when it's a perpendicular. All right, so that's what we need to know. Let's keep that in mind, and let's go to our next problem. Okay, so if we go to our next problem over here, on this one's make sure you do this with me as well, or we pay close attention, because this one's a little tricky. So that's what we come across. All right, so it says drag the yellow point till an accurate height comes up. So if we drag that yellow point, if we go over here, right, we notice it doesn't make that right triangle, right? And same over here. But here's what we do know. We know we can go, we're just talking about from top to bottom. All right, so what we do know is that right there is the height. But here's the tricky thing. It says 4.8, but it went off the screen, right? You can't see it. It's off the screen. So let's think about that mathematically. 4.88, 87, 86, 85, 84, right? 4.84. All right, so that's the tricky thing on this one, is that we need to keep that in mind when we're doing this. All right, so as just going to get this guy out of the way. All right, so what we do notice over here is this is going to be 4.84, right? So don't forget that 4.84. All right, so now that we know that, then we're going to say our area is going to be, area of a triangle is going to be 1/2 times the base times the height, right? So it's going to be 1/2 times our base of 4.1, right, times our height of 4.84. So that's going to give us a full area of 9.922 units squared. All right, whatever those are. All right, so I know you have this. Just make sure that we follow those formulas. Let me know if you have any questions. Make sure you have that quiz done for our test that's going to be next class.